I was watching a 60 Minutes interview just now on the naval forces for the U.S. and how those are compared to China. And one of the things that kind of interested me about it, because this is actually listed on government websites as a very big problem that they want to help people with, and that is the suicide rate within, or risk within, the U.S. But they were talking in the 60 Minutes video about the suicide rate among certain naval officers. And I understand that being in a claustrophobic space can be problematic. You can run out of things to do. When you're working on a naval ship, I would assume. I don't know, I've never worked in the Navy, but one of my strongest interests, due to the complexity of the situation and the dire need for it, is also to prevent suicides, not just in the U.S. or in the military, but worldwide. I very much so care about that. And I understand that one of the things about military training is that they train you to fight your fears. But I would assume that they should also treat you to fight the boredom that you're experiencing if you're in a situation where it becomes monotonous or depressing. Some of the ideas that are so simple that I would think of is, and this is going to sound insane, but why are naval ships the color that they are? Because, and this is going to sound crazy, but if you are in a psych unit or a psych hospital, or you're in some type of housing for psychiatric care, one of the things that they do is they use this manila paint because it's cheap and it has certain effects that are necessary. So they assume that that manila coloring is actually a neutral way to prevent people from having suicide. And I can understand that logic, but a lot of people have to realize that is an actual building code in whatever bill exists, such that they have to use that paint due to its efficiency in psych units, psych hospitals, etc., behavioral health units. So the problem with using that is that it is a depressing color, and it does not help convalescence. It actually causes people to become more suicidal. Because when you're in a locked unit, there's not enough sunlight to provide you with vitamin D, number one. So increasing vitamin D supplements amongst patients, along with other vitamins that you would normally find in something like vitamin C, among other things, might help people who are depressed. From my understanding, you can also use coconut water, which will actually have some antidepressant effects, according to studies. I don't know which studies, but I've just heard this. And I used to drink a lot of coconut water, and I usually like certain kinds other than other kinds. And coconut water is actually something that could be a really good thing to put into use as far as food. Now, another idea is to hang pictures on the wall or paint murals for naval ships, rather than keeping them completely gray like the manila walls in a psych ward. They need to change that manila coloring in the building code, or they need to replace those colors in order to prevent suicide. And color is usually associated in our minds with mood. So let me give you an example. There is a football locker room I heard about that is like painted pink. Now that's an effeminate color. Pink is usually associated in men's minds with women. And so that coloring tends to pacify the team that you're dealing with. Pink is a beautiful color, but you don't want to pacify someone who is working on a naval ship or who's convalescing in a psych ward. Well, maybe in a psych ward, but it's at least not depressing. And so gray and manila are colors that our government likes to use that are very depressing colors. And when I see a naval ship, my thought as far as how to prevent military suicides is, why not let them paint the ship or color the ship? You can use the same type of paint, but with paint that has a much happier color that allows people to be in a mindset where they can be more positive. Or using images in art that might allow their brains to be more or be less agitated. It's such a simple fix, and it's a lot cheaper than a lot of the things that people think of. Most people think of yellow when they think, or warm colors when they think of happiness, but also blending like yellow, orange, and red, they can create a sense of happiness or a upbeat mood among people who might go to war or be in a psych ward comparatively. And so while this is something that they need to change in the building code for psych wards and psych units, because it's a terrible standard color, and the same goes true with the military. And I think that fewer people would actually commit suicide in the military. And this goes for recruitment offices too, military as far as it goes. But you want a color that gets people ready, that also engages their mind and allows them to be happy, rather than confining them into a cold, dark, gray space. And I get the utility of a lot of things, but you have to think about how people feel just as much as you have to think about how physically capable they are. How is their mental state? So that's some ideas. Now, another idea is to have is to teach and have these individuals learn poetry in order to gain some logical composure. So it's to teach them logic, how to think, how to feel, how to discuss things in the arena of intelligence. And that's really what poetry should do. So it's more so poetics than it is poetry. But also poetry affects us emotionally rather than just simply building logic. And this is much better than giving someone pills for suicidal behavior or suicidal ideations or depression. Another good solution that I thought of for preventing suicide is to have naval officers who might be, let's say, in a submarine or something like that, in their off time, give them legal cases for the government, I don't know, Supreme Court cases, whatever it might be, and allow them to explore tangential thoughts in things such as the different legal cases and help with those cases. They could also teach people how to write contract law, how to defend themselves legally. Those are ways, and also how to write mathematical and philosophical proofs which may actually have applications for the Navy. Teach them tactical skills on an intellectual level using game theory and how to create game theory models in mathematics, rather than simply having them sit on a bunk and do simple functions as far as how they work on the ship and its maintenance. And I get that that's a big problem, is the maintenance of these ships. Now, maintenance and repair, if that's all you're doing, sometimes there are other things that our minds need to look at just so that we can eliminate those side thoughts and be able to actually feel like we're being useful as human beings. And people get tired of the monotony. You wouldn't eat, for instance, you wouldn't eat salami every day of your life. But if you did, you would probably get pretty sick of it. And that's monotony. And so another example would be to teach people dance. And allow them to dance every so often. I know these sound like such strange ideas, but they are ideas that I've thought about as far as my own thoughts in dealing with suicidal ideations and depression that I've had in the past related to my mental health. And so these are ideas that I just thought might help. Another thing is to have stand-up comedy nights for people to learn stand-up. And you can actually have actual stand-up comedians teach these people. Another cool thing would be to teach voiceovers to individuals who are in the military. And this is really interesting, because if you teach somebody voiceovers and characterization, they can do that at any point. The point of anything that is an anti-suicide method, the problem being that those methods cannot use materials that might aid someone in suicidal behavior. So if you want those individuals to recover, you have to teach them logic and emotion that considers things that might not necessarily be primary issues that they want to deal with. So all these side issues that they might have in their thinking or their doubts or whatever it might be, you don't want to give them something like a knife or a gun immediately, because that's something that someone could kill themselves with. Now, you wouldn't give them a piece of plastic either. That's the problem with suicide wards, is that they're so barren due to the fact that anything and everything, if you really want to kill yourself, you're going to find it and you're going to use it. For instance, when I was in a psych unit, I ripped a picture off the wall. It had nails in it. I tried to scar myself with the nails. Now, that is an instance of how I utilize something that would not be readily apparent to someone who wasn't trying to commit suicide. But it's readily apparent to people who are depressed or do hate their job or are suicidal. And also, discussion and logic and emotional help, those are things that matter. But you don't want to just put somebody into a therapy program or recovery program and hope they do well. You really want something that works, and the only way to make that work is to help people pursue happiness. But you also have to keep your mind busy, because the devil's hands are I forget what the saying is, but an empty workshop is the devil's I don't know.